Now in this section what we're going to do is we're going to sculpt a human skull. One thing that's really important when you're working with things at this scale is to keep in mind the actual piece you are trying to make. Now, no matter which way around you do it, the best thing you can do is have a look and get some reference photos. There's no point in making something that at the end of the day you're not happy with and having to start again. So what we'll do is we'll try to imagine the amount of material we're going to need to make a human skull at this scale, which for example is 28mm. So what I usually do is I will get a model just so that I can see roughly how big a head is. Let's get some light on this. There we go. So for this model here, incidentally it's one of the Lord of the Rings ones which I've been working on recently. The size of the head is actually quite small because these are more of a true to life scale. You'll find that with the Games Workshop stuff usually they work towards more of a heroic scale, which is a little bit more cartoony. So to be in keeping with the style of miniature that we're actually going to be working with, which is this guy here, I mean, you can see that he's not exactly true to life. You can see the skulls that I've done on there are a little large, but they're not far off, so I'm happy with those. They are a little on the cartoony side, so today I'm going to try and sculpt something a little bit more realistic. So this is probably about as much clay as I want, but I'm going to nip a little bit off anyway. First off, I'm going to seat it on the top here. It might even be a little bit too much. Snip a little bit more off. Less is more, as they say. Now, what I tend to do is I tend to form it into a rough ball first, and then sit it right on the top of the picture pin. Okay. Now, with most skulls that you will find in the animal kingdom, the spine is attached towards the back and to the underneath, especially with an upright animal like a human. So having a patch where it's sat flat is not a problem. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to squash it and pull it forwards just a little bit so that it's overhanging the edge of the picture pin just a little bit, because you'll find that skulls tend to, especially when they have the jawbone attached, be more like an oblong. Then underneath there tends to be a small box, so that's what we're going for. Now first off we need to figure out exactly which bits of the skull are where. So first off I think it's always a good idea to figure out exactly where the eyes are first in relation to the nose. Now just for this video we are going to be doing one without the lower jawbone, just because it makes life a little bit easier. Now, using the very pointy triangular chisel tool just to mark out where the eyes are. Okay. At this stage it is literally just has some kind of mark to follow. Now, already you can see that's the makings of a skull. Hey, time for a drink. Beer bonus. Now, when you look at the human skull, you'll find there's a few features that are obvious. The cheekbones are the most prominent things when they come outwards, as is the bridge of the nose. The cheekbones tend to sit a little bit wider than the rest of the skull. The eye sockets are obviously quite deep. Now, what I'm going to try to do is to show you how I achieve that. Now, on the sides of the skull, you'll usually find there's like a little dip. That's where usually the lower jawbone sits and moves, and there's a muscle group that goes from there to the bottom of the jawbone that allows you to chew. Without the meat, you're basically left with a box with a slight dip. Okay, so what I'll do is try to replicate that on the other side as well. So look at where the eye socket is, look at where the cheekbone wants to sit, just give it a bit of a prod. So that helps to raise the dome of the head a little bit, so that you've got a nice profiled skull. Now already you can see that it's starting to deform the features on the front. Don't worry about that, they are literally just markers. So now we've got those ridges on the sides, just refocusing on. You can see that's forming sides of the skull quite nicely. Now usually the lower jaw juts down a little bit, so what I'll do is just make a little mark to the underside of the cheekbones. Just to raise those up a little bit, make that a little bit more defined. Just reseat that on a little bit. Give it a little bit of a reshape. And it's starting to look a little bit more like a skull. Now I'm going to swap out to my trusty toothpick. Now remember, you're not trying to burrow this thing into the clay. What you're trying to do is actually stretch out the extremities of the sockets, because when you look at the skull, it's not just two great big holes where the eye sockets are, they actually pull out a little bit. Now, what I tend to do is I tend to make them a little bit bigger than they need to be, and then shrink them back down later. It's easier to imply depth than to actually burrow deep into the stuff, otherwise you end up with a really flimsy hollow box that as soon as you try to do anything with it just crumples, which is just not ideal in any way, shape or form. Anyway, so have a quick look round. Yeah, it looks like a skull-ish. So now what do we need to do? Let me just get my hands in the right place. So realistically, if we want to make this look more like a skull, we're going to need a bridge on the nose. So I tend to push the bit between the eyes back a little bit to bring that out. So instead of actually bringing it out, you push everything else back in comparison. Reform those sockets a little bit. And I'm just going to bring the forehead down a little bit and reduce the size of those eye sockets and imply the structure that gives the eye sockets strength. In the moment, kind of got a bit of a sassy look going on. Here, I got one eyebrow raised. I don't need a funky skull in my life, so what I'm going to do is bring that other eyebrow back down, even more of a pronounced brow, re-round those sockets a little bit, and you'll find that most skulls, the eye sockets are actually, oddly enough, closer to being boxes than round holes, so don't be afraid to pull this bottom bit out towards the edge of the cheekbones, because it's way more lifelike. So Make sure these side bits are looking okay. Dress it back up the other side. All out of focus again, sorry guys. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is try and pull this central bit back down to form the underside of those cheekbones and the front of the jaw, because in reality cheekbones actually suck back in towards the nose. Pulling those bits down, applying a little bit of pressure there to repronounce the bridge of the nose. What we're going to do, quickly lift those sockets a little bit. A bit heavy there. That's the trouble when you're working on camera. Every mistake is visible. It doesn't matter because it's so soft. You just reposition it. Round those back out a little bit until you're happy with the shape you've got. And finally, just need to make some kind of marks. The actual nostrils in the skull. And a couple of marks for some teeth. Doesn't have to be anatomically perfect because these aren't miniatures after all. Just have a quick look at this. Now just off screen quickly, I've just nipped off the bottom bits from where I formed the underside of his jaw. Okay. Now, I'm just going to use this scalpel to just make those incisions on the nose holes a little bit more pronounced. And then I'm just going to redo those teeth a little bit. I'm just using the back of the scalpel just to imply where the teeth are. And that's about as good as you're going to get for 28mm, unless you're some kind of actual professional, which I am not. And once that's cured, we'll take that off and we'll have a good look at it. Now, another thing that I said I was going to do in this video was modify a model for you guys. So what I've got is some kind of Mantic Games, I think it's either some kind of ogre or some kind of giant orc, I'm not entirely sure, but I mean these were just a bunch that I got in a eBay job lot. Didn't really cost a lot, so I don't really give a damn about them, but they are nevertheless slightly more interesting than some models I've seen. Now they do stand quite big, so yeah, they're pretty imposing. Anyway, if you glue them together in the standard formation, they are pretty good, but I still think there's room for improvement. Now, one of the things that I always find really annoying when you're putting these models together is that, you know, they've got this ball and socket jobby here so that you can actually stick a different head on, and it all kind of makes sense, and you're like, okay, yeah, I can pose it. But then you're left with this sort of weird neck. Now, I don't know about you, but other than robots, I've never seen anyone with a round neck that fits into a socket in the back of their head. So first I would usually just find a position I liked, and then green stuff in there, green stuff on there, and use that to hold it together and sculpt a neck so that it looks a little bit more organic and a little bit less like a model that's been stuck together out of crap. Now, because I'm going to modify this one, I really don't see the point in doing a standard model. So what I've actually done is I've taken one of the arm pieces, and I'll show you which standard arm piece it was. So it was a standard arm piece with a second hand on a massive ugly weapon, so that it just fits on like so, and the other hand comes around to meet it. Pretty standard, yeah, it's not too bad, but I'm in the habit of making things a little bit more unique. So what I've done is I've taken the hand off of the weapon, okay, so the blade is gone. I've also edited the hand a little bit. Let me just pull the focus into here so you can really see what I'm doing. And I've separated the arm into distinct chunks. So there's like a bicep chunk, a shoulder pad chunk, a forearm chunk, and I wanted it to have a pose like it was gesturing or pointing, because I want this to be some kind of leader, so he wouldn't necessarily run straight into the fray himself, albeit quite an imposing figure. He's there to lead, so he's pointing. So that's what this is. Now what I did was I took some jewellery wire, I twisted it so it gives it something for the green stuff to adhere to. I'll cut out the index finger on this fist to make space. So then I basically took my knife, cut a small hole in it, inserted that and super glued it, let it dry. So first things first, I would say we'd better decide what we're going to do in terms of getting the arm fitted, and then we can finish off by doing the finger on this hand. Now I've already done a bit of a dry fit on all of this, okay, so sometimes if I'm just playing with the idea, you can use a bit of blue tack just to make sure that the pieces semi-fit together before you get green stuff all over the place. Now I had to edit the back end of this bicep. Let me just get it the right way around, it does help, because of course originally it was sort of sat like this. Bloody focus. So originally it was sort of sat like this, so I've cut that away, and I've also cut that away so I can get a nice straight pointing arm. Looking too goofy, I'll fill the gap with green stuff. And then of course the shoulder pad will fit on top, and then the shoulder pad will go onto the body. Now what I'm going to do is I'm not going to have it stuck on like it's supposed to be, because it just won't work. So I'm going to add a bit of texture in there, a bit of filler, copy all these straps and bits and bobs up. Should be pretty easy. So, first off, I'll grab some new green stuff so it's nice and sticky, and as always just pull away crap out the middle. Nobody wants, nobody loves you, you are a wretched gone. Mix this up. Do not adjust your sets, this is me mixing it in real time, I haven't sped this up. Squeaky. So what happens when you get sweaty hands when you're mixing, because as you mix it generates heat, and I've always got sweaty hands anyway. Now this stuff does actually have a tendency to want to stick to everything except for oiled tools and water, so you can actually wet your hands to stop it sticking to you, but I tend to find that what happens is it just makes the surface slippery, and then the heat of my hands dries it off, and then you're left with sticky stuff all over again. So that, if I stretch it out, yeah, that's pretty good. So what I would tend to do is take off probably more than I'm going to need. Add it into there. Make sure I know which way around the shoulder pad goes. Add this up here. Squidge it back in. Play with. So now I'm going to get my bisected tube, clay shaper or collar shaper, depending where you are in the world. Got a little bit of grease on it. Center of the stick, and I'm going to jab all that back in there just to make sure we've got a nice bond between the two pieces. Once this is in, you can move it around. It's not like it's going to just fall apart if you start playing with it. So you can position it as you go. And this is just rough fitting, don't forget. Start with the major motions and add the details later. So around the back, don't want any of this guff to be poking out, so just smooth that off, pull it away from the detail that's on the armour. Tuck that back in there. Follow along the line of that strap, follow along the line of that bit of armour there. Will make it a little bit less like it's been added on. Lovely. Right, so for argument's sake, let's. You know what? I don't even like that head anymore. I'm gonna go ahead and change that. Did have a second head around here somewhere. There it is. So this guy, action stuff, which is pretty cool. Lots of interesting character. What I'll do is take the headpiece, put one green stuff in the back of the head socket, and then I'm going to just force that on. So he's going to want to be looking over here, a bit of an attitude, put his head on at an angle, just force that back in there. Now, at this point I don't want to get too excited and do loads of texture, but I mean, you know what muscular guys look like. Do a bit of research, get some anatomical pictures up if you're going to start sculpting actual body parts, and if you're in any doubt, look in the mirror, strike the pose that you're trying to do. Trust me, you'll find it way more useful when you pull the pose that you want your character to do. You might feel like a knob at first, but don't worry, no one's watching you, unless of course you're making a YouTube video, in which case everyone's watching you, so don't film that bit because you'll look like a ponce. So anyway, back to business. You know where the sinews in your neck are. Pull the pose, have a feel, look up some photos of those strong men pulling poses. You'll see where all the giblets and veins and all sorts of stuff is. It's worth it for the anatomical side, even if you don't want to see a bronze man in underpants stretching until it looks like he's going to pop a testicle. So I've added this big sinew here which supports the back of the neck. I'm just going to blend this out here. sorry, pull that down so you can actually see it. So we've got the sinew here. It's going to blend this bit out flat so it looks like less of an actual sphere in his neck. There's actually a type of sinew that comes up here on the model as well, and then they just done away with it, so don't worry about that. If you want to try and incorporate bits of the model, go for it. Sometimes it's better to just blend over it and have done with it, because it's harder work to make things make sense when things are at funny angles. If you look down here, you can see there's actually a sinew there, so anatomically that would realistically need to make some kind of sense. You don't need to make it make perfect sense. This is a fantasy model after all, not an anatomical study, but at least now his head's blended into his neck a little bit. It tends to make a little bit more sense. Done. Let's pull a bit of crap from this side down. Pretty much it for the head. So I would say the next step has got to be trying to get this bicep piece to fit on to make some kind of sense. I mean, there's always cheats when you're making these sorts of things, so I mean, even if you get the piece into the position that you want and you're still thinking that it's looking a bit cack, you could always put a piece of clothing over it, add a piece of armour, sculpt a piece of armour. There's loads of ways that you can work these things so that you don't end up with something that you're not happy with. What I'll probably do is, because I had a skin shawl on the lizard man, I'm sure some of you want to know how to do that, so I'll probably add something like that to this model at a later minute. Right, now let's worry about getting this arm stuck onto here in some kind of pose. So he's going to be pointing in that general direction. Okay, I think that makes some kind of sense. Now I get the next bit. Now, if you remember what I was saying earlier, I was going to have to pack a load of crap into this side so that it can actually bond properly. So I'll probably add a little bit more than I actually need. If I end up with excess, I can always nip it off. Now, when you're adding green stuff onto bits that are also attached with green stuff, you have to be a little bit careful, because if you start to move it around too much, you will end up with a model that falls apart. It's only so sticky. Sometimes that can work in your favour, sometimes it can be a bit of a bitch and it can limit what you do. But if you're careful with it, it can start to make some sort of sense. My first instinct is to bring this bit down, from a high point to a low point, fill a gap, and make the most of that join, because if you don't fill that gap, what you'll end up with is an air pocket, which you will find awkward to paint. It won't help the model hold together at all. See where this muscle group is here, you can just stop. So try to make the most of those muscle groups when you are working in green stuff. Full detail that's already provided for you, you just need to continue it. Muscles don't just suddenly end. There's such a thing as a muscular cul-de-sac. Try and join it up with as much surface on either side as you can. Not only does it help it blend, but it'll help it bond. As you can see, where I've been moving him around, his arms all up in the air. He's like, oh yeah, I'm going to point to the sky. So don't worry about that. You can just pull that back down. Reposition that as we need it. At this point I'm more worried about getting this lower section bonded. Blend that in. Fix this top bit. It's starting to bond quite nicely. I've been a bit clumsy here. A lot of green stuff that isn't where I want it to be, so I'm just going to push into it and pull to one side. You end up with like a little roll. What you can do is you can either pull that back around to where you want it, or at this point you could just pull it straight off. What I'm going to do, I'm going to bring it around. I'm going to use it to make the inside of this muscle a little bit more defined, because this one was supposed to be against the body, so it hasn't really got any texture on it. You know, the sculptors, they're not going to sculpt stuff that's never going to be seen. So, have to add texture where there wasn't any. Off a little bit. Most forearms, sorry, most biceps are sort of dent on the inside, so find those two muscle groups where the bone would be. Nothing wrong with using your thumb. Take the sheen off of things. Too bad. Popping down for a second, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try and find the piece that I was going to use. I seem to have lost it, like I do with all the things I'm trying to do. So this would be his main weapon. Now, it naturally wants to sit about there. Kind of makes sense that we'll put it there, so you can film a little bit. And you can position it however you like, but I'm going to put a bit of green stuff in there, give it a bit more of an angle. So let's go ahead and do that. Just a smidge of green stuff. Excuse me. Oddly enough, I am going to actually swap out to the round chisel tip. That weird on there. I want to get in around this muscle here. Oddly lumpy muscle. And if you can see it, all around this area you've got all these little rib muscles that they've sculpted in. So I don't want to lose all of that. Just poke all this cack in there. Try and get a good bond. Usually wouldn't do all this at once. I'd wait a little while for one bit to cure before I did another, which is always good practice. Of course, I'm trying to do a tutorial, so just watch how I can, in 3 seconds, potentially ruin this whole model. Move this green stuff background to the back side. Sorry. Close that gap. Smooth that out. Sometimes you never know. One of the things I always try to do is make the most of the sculpt that was already there, so literally just press in and pull over a very thin coating of green stuff over the existing musculature. You'll find that it'll help it blend in better if you try and sculpt all those muscles yourself. Bulged up the neck, as you've seen, because I've put too much pressure on it. It's easily fixed. This is what I said at the start, then I didn't listen to my own advice. Don't get too engrossed in the details because you will squash them. You can regain them, it's not a problem. Well, it is a problem because it's wasted time, but other than mild annoyance, it can all be redone. I'm going to work a little bit into here now, because I think I've got to the point where I can start adding some details. So I'm going to go for the flat chisel. I'm just going to try to emulate some of the stuff that's on this bicep over here. That's all sealed in. Start etching in a little bit of detail into this green stuff. These muscles are all way too bulked. This guy would basically be like a walking testosterone steroid bag to have muscles this bulgy. But obviously the people who designed it really enjoyed anatomy. The average warrior would probably have some kind of barrier between the muscles and the outside world, such as skin and a little bit of fat, but not according to these guys. So just try to emulate that without going too ridiculous. Now what I'm thinking of doing is adding that finger. So my suggestion is look at the length of the other fingers. See if the wire accordingly. The wire is only there to give it something to bond to, so you don't end up with a floppy digit. Doesn't have to be the full length. But, does need to be something there. This is the bit where I'd usually wait until the other bits are set first, because we're going to knock it all sideways in the attempt of getting this finger done, because it's on an extremity. As you can see, it's all over the place. And what I'm trying to do is make a cage with my hand. Hold just that forearm. Do is end up with something that looks more like a sausage with joints than a carrot. Blend that in a little bit. I'm not going to go with it. It's not the best time to do this. Dried and cured, you can come back and snip it off and do what you like with it. I think for now that's probably as much detail as I need to add. Just, I've completely finished with it. Redefine that armour a little bit where I've got a bit excited. probably him done. Okay, so now this thing's had time to cure, you can see that it's fairly robust. I mean, those green stuff joints, and you can see that that's on there. I mean, even that green stuff finger, there's a little bit of flex in it, but not a great deal. I mean, that joint might be a little bit flimsy, but I mean, what I usually do, if I find something like that where it's refused to cure, usually because I've got greasy fingers or something, I'll just go in, put a little bit of super glue in there, and just so you see there's a little bit of flex in there. Probably just put a tiny bit of super glue right in that bit there, and it'll be just fine. But in terms of green stuff modelling, it's not too bad. The major shapes are there. I mean, what you could possibly do with that is sculpt a little bit more detail onto it. It's by no means finished, but for a start, that will do. I'm happy with the hand, happy with the positioning, and that's the most important bit. Okay. Right. So, now the skull has had time to cure, it should come away from the pin fairly easily. The only bit that might be a bit of a struggle is around the front here, where I've made the teeth area a little bit thin. Might struggle with that, but I'll try and remove those bits first. So usually I'll just take my knife and I'll work just up from the bottom. You should, once it's dry, be able to peel it away without too much trouble. Yeah, you can see that I've already got the knife in behind those teeth there, so this shouldn't be too much of a hard reveal. And what usually happens at this stage is it pings off across the room and I nearly stab myself, so what I'll do is, now I've freed off the most important bit, just give it a tap, it'll come away. Just going to clean those up a little bit. And there you have one finished skull. I'm quite happy with that. That will make an excellent piece of background, or you could use that as an adornment, some kind of totem, the top of a pole, incorporate into a weapon or a shield or anything like that. I mean, you could even go as far as to start making your own skeleton warrior with that, but that would require armatures and a little bit of patience and a little bit of skill. If we've got an interest for it, I could show you guys how to do the armatures, but you guys are going to have to comment to get content. So let me know in the comments what you think, and I'll try and make it happen. Okay? Thanks for watching.